Heather. I'm the Vice President of Talent and Touring for Live Nation Urban, and I have these amazing ladies next to me who are all at the top of their companies in the C-suite.
And we're cute.
And you're cute. And you're killing shit. I want to dig deep today and ask you guys a lot of questions about who you are and how you got to where you are, and some challenges that you faced along the way. So I'm going to first start by giving some really brief introductions, and then I'll get right to it.
Okay.
First, I'm going to introduce Nadia Rollinson, who's the Chief Human Resources Officer at Live Nation Entertainment. I met Nadia when I started at Live Nation, probably like 2 months in, and went over to the bar to get some coffee.
Because yes, we do have a bar.
Yeah, we have a coffee bar.
Wait, y'all have a bar?
And a bar.
A full bar.
Like a bar?
A bar.
Whoa.
High-end liquor, everything. It's
But
great.
I didn't go for a drink. I went for coffee.
Right, exactly.
And you were sitting there, and I remember looking at you like, oh, because it's not a lot of people that look like us at Live Nation. So you were sitting there. I think you were in a meeting, and I was like, oh my God, you work here? You were like, do you work here? And I'm like, and you introduced yourself to me, and I think that was the first time that I met a Black woman at the C-level. So I was very in awe of you, and thank you for that. Thank you for setting an example for me.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for being there. You're changing the game.
Yes.
Thank you for moving my hair.
Yeah, you're fine.
I don't know if you remember this, but we met a year ago.
We did?
We did.
Was I drunk? No, I'm kidding. She was talking about drinks earlier. Yeah.
We met at the Amara conference in Morocco.
Yes, in Morocco.
We did.
Oh, we're fancy.
Yes, we
Yeah.
were. Super. So I remember meeting you and then going to my hotel and immediately writing in my journal. The first word that came to me was giant. Like, everything about you is larger than life. Your hair, your beauty, your voice, your height, like
thank you.
everything, your support of other women.
Yes.
I just remember saying, oh my God, like the first thing I said to you was, you're so powerful.
Okay, now my eyelash is gonna fall. Thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
Very, very kind.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And hopefully you can share some of your secrets with us today.
Yes, let's talk secrets.
And Janine, I'm sorry, you're the chief executive, not executive.
Oh, you can
chief
give me all the titles.
marketing officer of William Morris Endeavor.
Yes.
And then we have Janine Liburd, who is the chief marketing and communications officer at BET.
Woo, look at you. Yes, Janine.
And we only just met yesterday, briefly, but I feel like I've known you forever. Like, we immediately connected. So thank you so much for like being so warm and open and embracing me. And thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask the first question, and then all of you can answer. I'm gonna start with you, Janine. What is the first question? Okay, so as a C-suite executive, is this where you thought you'd always be?
Wow. We're going to start there. I don't know when you start thinking about when you're going to start. So I think I back up into that. I never had a specific thing that I wanted to be. I'm from Brooklyn. Anyone Brooklyn in the house? No? Okay. Thank you. Hello.
There's always somebody from Brooklyn.
It's like, that's why we have a call and response. We like to know. And should somebody try to roll up, we're like,
oh, the Brooklyn people,
and then we're ready. So, right? Okay.
Got it.
I don't think I ever knew, and I think for me it was always about just going with what I thought. So I went to Vassar College, and I thought I wanted to be an actress, sorta. And but then I started learning so much, and then I wanted to go into policy, and I got a master's in public policy, and I was like, I'm gonna be mayor of New York. And then I worked actually here in DC, and I really thought I wanted to do public policy, and then I worked here in DC, and I was like, no, I really don't want to do that. And then I kind of stumbled into entertainment. So I never had like, I want to be a C-suite executive. That never was my kind of driving factor. It was more, I just want to be in a place where I could have an impact. And I think when you just come up with more of a plan of where you see yourself, and know that it'll evolve, if the C-suite is something that you want, that path will lead you there.
How about you, Nadia?
I'm a little bit different, so I did know, but that's not surprising. And for those that know me, I was a very sort of bookish, very much intentional, child, and my father was a C-suite executive, and he was one of the few, and it's so unfortunate that there's still only a few of us. And this was generations ago. And I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it was, but I knew what corporate America was. And I didn't know what role I would play in corporate America, but I knew if I was going to do it, I wanted to be at the top. And that to me indicated, hard work, success, the ability to influence and make change and for the things that you believe in, and having a platform. I didn't know that at 7, but probably around 18 or 20 when I was in college thinking about this stuff, I knew that was something that was important to me. So I didn't know how to get there, and often I feel like our paths, we don't know exact every step, but having a North Star helps direct your efforts or your emphasis in a different way. So I knew I wanted to be at the top. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know what it was exactly going to be for me, but it's something I could dream about.
Yeah. I probably fall somewhere in the middle, in that I didn't have a plan. I've never actually had a plan, but I've always felt like I wanted to be in charge also.
Right.
From a young, I was always confused when people didn't just do what I said.
I can totally see that.
Oh yeah, no, I'd be like, I don't understand why you not jumping when I say jump. And that was early, And so I think all along I have always been drawn to jobs and positions, and probably even walked into rooms as if I was in charge. And so that has just been part of my ethos and my aura. And so yes, when I walk into a room, I expect everyone to turn around and be like, yes, ma'am. So that's part of my journey. Although I think in the career and in the build and in the jumps, that has also woven itself into my process, right? In that I always want to be in positions in which I actually did have power, that I was empowered. And whenever I felt like I wasn't, which of course as a Black woman in corporate America, we know often comes with the territory of not being empowered, then I would be like, oh, okay, y'all don't see me, I'm out of here. Which has been part of one of the big lessons about when to know when to call it.
Got it.
When to know when to leave, so that you can continue to walk in your power and not be diminished by people who don't think you're powerful.
Yes. So you talk about when to know when to leave. Like, when do you know when to leave? Like,
when you want to curse people out. That's when you leave.
Do you curse them out? And
While
then
you're
leave?
there?
Or
You curse them out in the process.
Oh, like on the way out.
In the way, yeah. No, it's.
Want to get the path right.
Yeah, it is a serious question, right?
Yeah.
Because we joke about it, we can laugh about it, but we have responsibilities.
Right.
And it's like you can't just get up and walk out. I'm a single mom. I have relatives who depend on me.
Yeah.
I can't just get up and quit my job when I'm mad.
Yeah.
I have to have a plan.
Right.
And that's actually the key, is that I may not have a plan for where I want to go next, but I have a plan when I know it's not working for me anymore. And so therefore I start to think about, well, what is it going to take for me to actually then make the next move?
That's right.
Who do I need to know? What are the calls I need to make? And by the way, I don't make it when I'm fed up.
yeah.
That's right.
I start making it in the beginning. Yes. As soon as you start getting that feeling, oh, I see you don't respect me. Oh, okay. Let me just call my girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? Like that moment is when I start to think about, okay, well, what is going to happen, right? How do you prepare? It's like any other thing that we plan for, right? You have this event coming up. Maybe you start thinking about what you're going to wear, how you're going to do your hair, or like who you're going to take, who you're going to see there. It's the same thing for our careers. It's like you understand where it is that you want to go. So then how are you going to build to get there? You don't just wake up and then all of a sudden, otherwise you won't look right.
But how do you, and this is, I have to ask, sorry.
I'm like, Janine.
The moderator.
I was about to ask you next,
because
Janine, so.
because I think part of that is, yes, it's knowing when, but how do you comport yourself in that transition period? Because I think so many times it's yes, you can come up with that plan and you can think of those things, but what I always try to kind of talk with people through is, but while you're here, this is how you have to think about your plan. This is how you have to present when you're in the room, and all that attitude and unhappiness and drama that you may have, and the narrative that's going on in your head about maybe the person you are literally looking in the face and talking to.
Yes.
How do you make it into a positive for yourself and learn a lesson. So I'm just curious how,
Yes.
both of you, how
No,
do
it's a
you
good
do
question because here's the thing. This is the point about our magic.
Yes.
Right? Unfortunately, it's born out of strife and out of a lot of challenges that we in particular have faced, but it has become our superpower. I can walk into any room and make you believe that I like you. And that I respect you.
I'm immediately self-conscious now. I thought we were girls.
I'm just saying, But the truth of the matter is that how many of us in this room, and let's literally be real, how many of us in this room have walked into a situation in which you had to pretend you were okay on a daily basis, right? You've probably become very attuned at how to switch it on, right? Like that, right? You're real good at it. And the thing is that it's become a protective mechanism for us in these situations. Now, the truth of the matter is that it's not healthy, right? So there's some learning and some work that we have to do for ourselves in order to be in a healthy place where we're not constantly in that space, because that's just survival. That's not actually thriving, right? You're just surviving at that point. So we have to do the work to uncover so that we can be full-faced and, out in our fabulosity. But at the same time, we use those protective mechanisms in order to get through the moments when you know you've had enough. And you've got to make it to the next day in order to get out safely. Yeah.
Tonight, you can ask your question. Sorry, I apologize. I apologize.
So you guys are all so fearless, and when you walk into a room, you own it. Where do you get your confidence? Where does that come from? And can you bottle it up and give me some of it?
Well, first, I would say it's not always fearless. I think part of it is, sometimes you got to fake it till you feel it. But the crux of your question around, how do you get that confidence? How do you get that self-assuredness? I think is just doing the work and being an expert at what you do. You don't have to be arrogant, but you do have to be certain that you know what you're talking about. You know that you have done this before, or that if you haven't, you can figure it out. I know the right people around me, or I know what questions to ask, or I know when to be quiet and observe in order to take it all in and then sort of speak up and add my piece. Part of that is knowing that you have done the work to be there, and no one can take that away. And so that brings you a level of self-assuredness and confidence that I can come in and contribute in ways that make sense, right? But outside of that, outside of a work context, just in the day-to-day job, part of it, we were just talking a little bit about it with your phone and taking pictures of all your friends. For me, it's my sister circle, my girlfriends, my other women who are doing great things in various stages of their life, and how they've seen me grow up through my own career and life and marriage and friends and moves to many different cities, et cetera, that know exactly who I am and have seen what it takes to do this and can be supportive and remind me of that in the times that I need it.
Is this something that you've always had, you've had your parents instilled in you as when you were a child, or is this something that you developed?
That's so interesting. I think with my female circle, so there's a lot of stuff in the, sort of the popular discourse, women don't support each other. I think that's BS. I don't think that's true. Or if it's true, you're not around the right women.
Okay.
I think
that's a word.
100%.
That's real.
100%.
And not every person, woman or man, serves you at that moment in time, and so you need to make choices. But for those that do, my mother was that way. And this is probably getting way too much into this family, I guess. My parents divorced after 40 years of marriage, and which is crazy. And it was my mother's girlfriends who were there for her, who had known her for 35 years. You know what I mean? And these are the women who are ride or die, who know all of her fault, all of her beauty, all of her complexity, all of the things that she contributes to the world, and is there and sort of rallies, and they all do it for each other. And I've seen that over the course of my life growing up with my parents, and then beyond that, and have come to appreciate it in a different way as we have gone through our lives, marriage, children, death, health, whatever, that has come to pass to say, okay, this is what matters, and investing in those relationships. This isn't just something you tap into and like, okay, and then you're like, okay, this is cool. I haven't talked to you in like 5 years, and I don't know what's going on. Like, you need to invest in those networks. And so, Bose, you said something that was really interesting around you pick up the phone as soon as you feel like, this isn't, they're not seeing me. The reason why you can, and hopefully all of us can pick up the phone, is because we've invested in those networks over time.
That's true.
Like, whether it's your girlfriends, whether it's your family, whether it's your professional network, formally or informally, it is a constant sort of experience that you sort of pay back all the time. So for me, the confidence, real talk, because I just had dinner with a girlfriend of mine last night, and we opened a bottle of wine, and 3 hours later, they're closing down, like, y'all need to leave. Don't you have to go to Broccoli Fest? And we're talking, and she works as an assistant U.S. attorney here in D.C. and just going, all the stuff that you see in the news, she's in the middle of too, on the government side, and it's real, and there's not a lot of us doing it, and so that support is important, and that helps give me the confidence to sort of step in the room, and whether it is real or sort of, putting on the mask for a moment, to be fearless.
And I think it's one thing, I love the sisterhood piece, because that's how I live my life. Like, while I'm sitting here, I'm just imagining what I'm missing on the text chain. There's some some narrative that's happening that is exploding. And they're like, where are you? I'm like, I was on a panel. But the step I would take before that, just to add, because I totally agree with everything that you said, is really just that self-discovery. And however, because those people who haven't spent time with themselves, and you look at them and you're like, can you go spend some time with you? Because all that you're doing, all that extraness, has absolutely nothing to do with me. And that was like a lesson that I learned. I don't know, it's a long story how I learned it, but the net is like I really, I went to Vassar and I spent a year abroad, and while some of my friends were going to Paris and they were going to London, I went to the Mecca of Atlanta, and I went to Spelman for a year.
Okay.
Any Spelman ladies in the house?
Right here.
We didn't even talk. See, that's why it was nice. And I'm in this new environment, and part of what got me there was I had taken this Black feminism class in my sophomore year at Vassar, and I was like, you know what? This is too much information in my head. I've got to get out of this environment before something not great happens here. And that was like the beginning of my self-discovery, and just really kind of understanding who I was and the power of being a Black woman in the world. Like, your power in your church when you get up and you do your, church play on the stage. Like, we knew we were doing it then, but then you start to really understand your political power and your narrative. And I always, when I'm talking to myself, I talk to myself a lot, not surprisingly, and but talking to my girlfriends, when we're trying to figure out where is that confidence and how does it show up in the room, like, it's really about taking that extra time to understand yourself and understand your triggers and understand what brings you joy and what gives you happiness, because then in those times you're not afraid of being alone, and then instead you actually relish being alone. Because you want to be able to enjoy that self-time, and then it allows you to think of all the things that come with it, your self-care. Am I breathing today? Did I drink my water today? Did I exercise today? Did I take a minute to think about, did I call my mother today? Did I just do something that will make me feel good? And when you do all of those things and you're centered, then you're confident, because everything else is happening around you and not to you, because you've taken care of yourself.
I love that.
I think the only thing I'll add to that, because all those points are so right, is that like I said, I have felt powerful for a long time, right? I think it's part of just my being. But confidence is another matter, and I love the point you made about not always being fearless, right? We walk into rooms a lot of times being fearful. But for me, my testimony is that I don't look like what I've been through, right? And so my confidence has grown over time because I have survived. I have been through things, and they have taken me down, and I got up and I kept going. And so my confidence resides in the fact that I know I can't be felled. I know I can't be. You can bring whatever you want, and I will still rise anyway. And so for me, it is the test of time, it's the test of trials, it's the test of the things that come my way that I've been able to overcome, and knowing that regardless of what comes, I will be able to stand again. And so that confidence is unshakable because of my self-worth and self-knowing.
And please. And I just want to say, Bose came and spoke at Viacom and did a Q&A, and to this point, as I've been in her space for many years, and she was having this conversation with a good friend of hers in a room like this, and I learned so much about your story that day, and I was like, well, you really don't look like everything that you've been through. And I just remember being so inspired and encouraged by that conversation, and then having it with your sister Fran at the same time was just so beautiful. So I just wanted to comment to that. Well, that was a special day, so.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of us have been through a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so as we walk around and, you're here today looking beautiful and amazing,
Yeah.
it's like there's nothing that we can't achieve because we're here.
And the last thing I was going to say about on the confidence piece is history. I don't think we spend enough time really appreciating the history of Black people, of Black women specifically, and really understanding our stories and the impact that they've had over the course of history. And when we don't know the stories, I love that you kind of woke up powerful, but I'm raising 2 teenage daughters, and I was like, I know I did not do this to my mother. I do not understand what is happening. I wasn't the most awesome kid, but I was not like this. And so watching them in their journey and thinking about confidence, I think of it as my own self and being a woman, but I spend more of my time thinking about it through a lens of a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. And that history piece is so important. My oldest daughter, over her spring break, went to do a service project at a Navajo reservation in Arizona. And she came home and said, Mom, do you know living on a reservation it's like 75 years ago. It's like, no, they have outhouses. They were literally out in the field. And she went and wrote a letter to the head of the history department at her school to say, why are we not learning about Native Americans in our school? Why do we not know this story? She was like, I can't believe I don't know this story. And it was interesting hearing it from another perspective to say, exactly. And so how can we feel powerful if we don't know our stories?
Can you guys share with us some of your fears and how you overcome them?
I know.
Got the talking people real
like, how
quiet.
much time do we have?
I was like,
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, this is maybe a more philosophical one, right? I am fearful that I won't complete my destiny. You know? And so every day I am living urgently. Like literally every day. I feel like I'm constantly trying because I want to live the biggest life that I can. Wow. You know, and so I don't want to leave this planet without having made an enormous mark. I don't want anyone to forget my name. And so I am living urgently, powerfully, moving quickly because I want to have that. And I'm afraid if I don't do that, I won't have it.
Gosh, there are a few people who make me feel like just the total slacker. I wasn't answering that question. Anyway, I don't want to say I don't have fear, because I definitely have fear. I have fear mostly about health, because I just think that's the most important thing. Someone was telling me about a study about just how long our children will live, they're going to be 110 or 120 or something like that. So I do have fear about not necessarily my own mortality, but my own health, because I do, and I was just speaking to Miss Linda Green over here about, I see these amazing women in their late 60s, 70s, 80s, and they are crushing it, killing it, being amazing, melanin popping, black girl magic rising. And I'm like, I want to be 80 and healthy and happy and living the next thing and doing the next thing. So I think that's my biggest fear is really, and I think that's why I'm so passionate and speak so much about taking care of your body and your health, and C-suite's important, and I want everyone to do what they need to do, make that money, secure the bag, whatever what everyone's saying, the kids. But you can't do any of that if you cannot move your body, if you can't breathe, if you can't be healthy, if you can't feel good, if you're not eating right, if you're not living your best life in terms of your inner self. So I think that's my biggest fear.
Yeah, I would echo all, we all probably are going to emphasize everybody's points here, especially the health thing. And of late, I've taken that more as a priority because I felt fine most of my life. And then all of a sudden you see the people around you, and you're right, exactly. If you can't walk, you can't do anything. Nothing else matters. Or if you can't sort of get up without taking a myriad of medications or pills for your health, like that matters, and that affects how you show up for your friends, for your family, for anything else in your life. So health is important. We'll get into that because I also now, I don't know if it's an LA thing, I'm into mindfulness now more than I ever have been. But outside of that, for me, a fear is making sure I'm living the life I'm intended to live. It's a little bit of a takeoff of what you're saying. It's, you want to make sure that you are focused and spending your time and energy on the right things. And all of these things that we're saying can interweave into that. Sometimes you get caught up with what's in front of you and not having the wherewithal to sort of look at things with a little bit of space and distance between you and it to understand, okay, this is just a moment in time, or I can get through this, I am resilient, or I have the right people around me, or I have the strength internally in order to get through this, but instead it's impacting you in a way that is detrimental. And so you end up spending your time, your best selves, your best moments on things that actually don't matter in the grand scheme of your long life, hopefully that we will all have. So for me, at this point, it's, am I spending time with the people that matter on the things that give me joy, that are energy giving rather than energy sucking, that I am around people that are affirming, not just people to be around me that I feel like should be there because of the circumstance, that I'm making intentional choices, that I'm not just defaulting into life and letting things happen. And so my fear is making sure that I am living this life in the fullest extent possible.
Just a quick question for you on that part. So when you said...
Janine, you just over here just...
Go on, girl. Yes.
Live your best life, Janine. Live your best life. Go ahead.
Come on. But when you just said, like, knowing what the right thing is, so how do you figure out what the right thing is?
Like, you're like journey, and not to be cliche, like, oh, that's the journey. Yeah. But that's the questions you have to ask yourself. You touched on this a little bit, spending time with you. The questions you have to ask yourself of, what are my values? What do I believe in? How do I want to be? Am I living up to my own expectations of myself? And not letting yourself off the hook for that. I think a lot of that, and that morphs over time. So that may be something different when you're in your 20s and when you're 30s and when you're 40s or in your 50s, or if you have a family or if you don't, at different stages of your life. I mean, there's core things that stay constant, but around the edges there's some things that may adjust. But constantly recalibrating and thinking about that, I think, is part of deciding, okay, well, how do I know? At this moment in time, that served me. I was doing this, or I was a part of why. Is that still the same thing? And checking in. And so you can say, okay, does this still feel right? I think you mentioned, am I still being seen here? Am I still getting validated? Am I still sort of contributing in the way that I feel like I can be? No? Okay. Now it's time to think about where else I need to be spending my time so I am living the full life that I'm supposed to live.
That is such an important point, by the way, about the checking in. It's something that I think sometimes we get lost in when we create the plan, right? And then you're stuck to the plan
and you're
because,
boxes.
like, oh, I got to do this thing. Well, maybe your circumstances change. Maybe your feelings change. Maybe your goals change.
That's
you
right.
know? Maybe, I don't know, you woke up that day and just felt differently.
Yep.
And you should be able to express that and be okay with that. Knowing that changing your mind doesn't mean that somehow you're wayward or that, you're not going to accomplish the goal. but that you have the flexibility and the nimbleness to be able to adjust for yourself, not by anybody else's standards, but by your own standards.
And that's important.
Yeah,
it is by your standards. And it's even when you, because I talk about this with a lot of family and friends, like younger folks in my family, and they're looking through, what they're going to be focused on. I call it the brutal facts. Like, you need to be able to look in the mirror and say what's true for you, irrespective of what anyone else will say, your friend, your best friend, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever it is, and just be honest. Like, you need to know, because once you have that honesty with yourself, then you can move forward with purity. And there isn't this, I'm trying to fit other people's expectations of me or what I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, just even if it's things like, I don't know, you mentioned you want to go make that money, maybe that is what you want to do right now. It is okay.
Yes.
As long as you acknowledge it for yourself, irrespective of what anybody else may say or think. But you need to be honest with yourself. And too often I feel we aren't, and that's when we sort of go down paths that don't serve us.
Well, you know what? Another word, because listen.
Sorry, we're all wait a minute.
Over here, it's like, I'm not going to ask no more
second.
questions. Because the thing is that, even as it relates to work, I was thinking about this the other day, that I don't think there's actually been a job that I took where my circle, not the tight circle, but the folks out looking around, said, that's a good idea. There hasn't been one yet.
Really?
Wow.
No. Amazing, right?
Amazing.
Because what's happened, though, is that because I've been truthful to what I want,
Yes.
I have then been able to turn it into the thing that people are like, girl, I knew it. But in the beginning, though,
They weren't.
you were like,
They
girl,
weren't
you
co-signing.
out of your mind.
Yeah.
It literally was, this is a real example, we're fam, I'm going to tell it. I was at Apple.
Yep.
Having a great time. I had 2 offices, one in San Francisco, one in LA. I had done the Apple keynote. It was, got rave reviews, the whole thing. I was sitting very comfortably in my C-suite job. And I was quite unhappy, to be honest. I was feeling the pressure of the gilded cage.
Yes.
Where it was everything looked great. But I really wasn't that empowered. I was no longer able to do the things that I wanted to do and move in culture the way I wanted to move, because there were expectations put on me because of where I sat. And I was looking around okay, well, I need to break out of here. I need to, do something else. And I, divine intervention, because I'm a faithful woman. I believe in God. And I had a chance meeting with Travis Kalanick, who was the founder of Uber. And at the time, the business had exploded because, of a lot of different things, but it was going down the tank. And we had what was supposed to be an hour-long conversation, which turned into 8 hours worth of a conversation where I was essentially telling him what to do with the business. And I left that meeting and immediately knew that that's where I needed to go. It was like that moment. And I was sitting in my office and I was like, woo, when I call my mother and tell her I'm leaving Apple to go to Uber, this is not going to be a good conversation. You know what I mean? But when I quit, it was like everybody came out. People were like, she is destroying her career. How could she? This is she's going to be the next this, that. This is a terrible place to go, da-da-da. And the truth of the matter is that I was more empowered at Uber and being able to do things the way I felt needed to be done. I was put on a bigger stage because then all of a sudden need to be a face of the company. And therefore, I was doing things my way, the way I thought it needed to be done. I was proving the fact that I knew that I was strong enough to be able to handle that kind of pressure and also move the business in a way that no other white man in Silicon Valley was able to do.
Right.
So for that reason and many other reasons, I know for sure that when we follow our path, when we know exactly when we're in tune, like you were saying, to our own spirit, understanding where you're supposed to go next and not listening to the noise of other people who are putting their expectations on your life.
That's right.
Then you're able to really come into your full power.
Yes. And to emphasize that, since we're bouncing off,
keep going.
Because the higher you go, the more pressure that there is. And so don't just think, oh, well, you know, I can just decide. And you're making it seem that it's easy. And I just know what those environments can be like. And it is the expectation and the weight and the gilded cage, you know, there's a lot that comes with that, right? And so that's where the work that you're doing, or the introspection, the time with yourself from the beginning, has given you that resilience. So when those moments come, you're ready.
Yes.
You are ready. Because it is very easy to stay comfortable and unhappy.
Say that one more time.
It's very easy to stay comfortable.
Say it one more
and
time.
everybody else, did you not hear? It is very easy to stay comfortable. Because everyone, just as she was saying, everyone's looking at you saying, are you crazy? Why would you?
Right.
You're an Apple, it's shiny, and you got 2 offices. Did you know you had 2 offices? And this great keynote, and everyone's like lauding you. And internally, I'm sure they're patting themselves on their back, and they're just excited that you're there, and everyone thinks everyone's winning, right? So why rock the boat?
Right.
So that's where your internal strength, your internal compass matters. And just like I like that you said your inner circle got it. So like that's why your inner circle, whoever that is, and remember, sometimes you need to trade sometimes people out, and that's okay. You need people who are affirming of you and are there for you, not their own agendas. And sometimes that may be just 2 people. Doesn't have to be 18 people, 25 people. That's when that continual investment over time will allow those crucible moments to be ones that you can handle and thrive in. Even on the other side, because you will get the arrows thrown at you. And I think we talked about this yesterday when we were prepping for the panel around, like how do you stay strong, like in times of adversity and things like that? It's important that you realize that no matter what choice you make, whether you're being true to yourself or not, there's going to be people that are supportive of you and people that aren't. And just know that. Just know that. And sometimes, even when you are true to yourself, sometimes you get more naysayers than you thought you would. That doesn't mean you shouldn't make the choice. So just realize, because sometimes we get caught up in oh, but okay, maybe if I do it this way, it'll make it easier, and that's the right thing to do. But if you're not true to who you are, the brutal facts, honest in the mirror, even if just you in the mirror saying, okay, this is what I want, what I know, you can handle anything that comes your way. Not that you won't get bruised or battered, but you can handle it because you're being true to who you are. So,
whew, yes. We all need to take a breath after that.
Can we speak to the women in the room that want to have families? Like most women think that they have to put their careers on hold to have a family, or they think they have to put their family on hold to have a career. Can you guys like touch on your family structure, and how it's working for you, and how you're able to, I guess, do your job and be so present in your personal lives?
Ooh, girl. Okay.
we're getting in it.
time.
We're getting in it.
I know. Well,
we got 5
so as I mentioned, I was going to be fast. As I mentioned, I have 2 daughters, married for 17 years, and you know, I think for me, part of it was when you're looking for the C-suite or you're looking for your path, it's also about finding an environment that works for you. And so I've been at Viacom this next month is 19 years. And I've been able, I think I've had about 10 different jobs. I've jumped from MTV to Viacom and I'm at BET now. And so one was having a great work environment that allowed me to not stress over like, am I working or am I having a family? Like I never had that bifurcated, it was never an either or. And so for me, it was really, you know, lucky enough to find the person. Let's start with that. And then I worked for a woman who, at 6 o'clock, she was getting her things and out the goodbye. And after we had chatted like for 3 hours, and she was like, "So tomorrow, if I could have this, this, this," and every day at 6 o'clock, she packed her stuff because she went home to see her daughter. And I learned really early on that you can do both. You have to manage your time. You have to create a team. That's the one thing I do want to talk about is leading and leadership and working with and creating a great team. None of us got here because we are like these individual rock stars. Like, we created and worked with people who we depend on, who we are thankful to, because when you're off, when I'm sitting here doing this, I shot off about 15 emails like, can you do this, and can you run down, and can you do that? And if they're not feeling as passionate and as excited and want to help me succeed and help the organization succeed, then I can't do this. So for me, it was never an either or. I was blessed to have 2 kids. And it's all about the unit. My parents. Some other people say, well, would you move to LA? I was like, I have to move like 35 people. I've got the auntie who does the hair. I got the auntie who makes the cakes. I got, my mother. So it's a system. So I think, we see this like dynamic, I'm doing it. If no one is doing it by themselves, and once you start thinking you're doing it by yourself, that's when you just become paralyzed, because you're like, I can't manage this. And then once you release it, you're like, okay, yeah, girl, could you come do this hair? Because I can't. And then you just release yourself to do all those things. So for me, it's really been about, we talk about this all the time. It's not about balance. You just have to kind of be where you are one day and then be where you are the next, and just give your full self that opportunity to just be in whatever space you are and just enjoy it. And so when I'm with my daughters, we're having a great time. I've been fortunate to have a job where they like coming to work with me because it's fun, and they can do fun stuff. And so, but I think the biggest thing is not putting too much pressure on yourself that everything has to happen. And one last thing I will say just about our bodies is that if you are thinking about the process, and I had this conversation with a young woman, I will not say her name, who has been dating someone, and she was really, really focused on, I want to get married and then have the baby. And I was like, well, I'm not trying to say, but I've been much more vocal about, as you age, it does become harder to have children. And if that is something that you want, it is something that you need to think about for your body and for yourself. I would talk about being Mary Jane, but it's over. But it's real. It's a real conversation. It's a real conversation to have with that inner circle.
That's right.
If it's something that is important to you, because as we know, the world is changing. There is no order to anything that we're doing now. So just do what's right for you and do what's right for your body.
And just to emphasize that point, so at Live Nation, we just started paying for IVF voluntary.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Yep. Great.
And so for exactly that reason, that we wanted to provide flexibility for people to think about their families in different ways over time, right? So that's one. So what I love about this panel, outside of it's just great, but we all have different backgrounds and experiences. So for me, I'm married. I do not have kids. We've decided not to have kids. We knew this from while we were dating. That was part of the conversation. It just didn't happen. Like, oh, you don't want kids? Oh, okay. No, we planned that. It's just my husband and I and a new puppy. He is David. He is a C-suite executive, but works and lives in Chicago. I work and live in LA, and we own a house in South Carolina.
Okay, you better do it.
So we are, he was supposed to be here, and I got a text, before he's like, I missed my flight, I can't see my broccoli. I'm like, oh, I'll see you later. So, so we commute, and so he comes to LA every weekend, or we're together somewhere every weekend. If we would be in DC this weekend if we were staying, or New York, or wherever. He has a global job, I do too. His businesses are in Asia and Europe, so he's on a plane most weeks of the year. So being in control of your time is helpful for that. The environment the company that you're at is helpful for that, but also that is credits we put in the bank to get to the place where we now can be in the space to control our time. So it just doesn't happen, right? We've been together for 14 years, we're married for 8. So this isn't something that's new. We've invested in this, and it's just the choices that we've made, and it's been working. So it's possible to have different experiences or setups in your own relationships and marriage and family.
Yeah. And I think the last point on that is that I do appreciate the diversity in our experiences, even though we're 3 Black women in the C-suite.
I'm trying so hard up here, y'all don't know.
Okay, yes. But because like all of our experiences are so different,
Yeah.
you know, and all of our setups are different. And I think the question is such an important one about thinking about it, being mindful, you know, creating your own journey so that you can decide what works for you and what doesn't. And as I mentioned, I'm a single mom. Unfortunately, my husband passed away 5 years ago when my daughter was 4. And it clearly, I mean, the understatement of the year, that it rocked my entire universe, you know, in that I was unprepared for what that meant or what that journey was going to be like. And I did feel paralyzed, very much paralyzed, because again, as a habit of maybe just me, but I think a lot of Black women, we tend to take a lot on ourselves, right? And don't tend to ask for help. And so I was at a stage in my life where I was the center of our family and I was doing everything. And so then when he passed, and I was sitting there thinking, how am I going to do this? I did not plan to raise a child by myself. I don't even know where to begin. I don't know what to do. And I was dealing with all of my grief and everything else. It very much dawned on me that I needed to reach out and that I needed help and that I couldn't do it by myself. And so now it's like, yeah, my network of help is a lot. You know, it is my mom and it's my sister and my aunt and my 2 assistants and everybody in the circle who I definitely rely on, that if they are doing what I am asking of them, that then I will also be successful, and being humble enough to be able to say I can't do it. And therefore to be able to manage then the balances. But yeah, you have to find also the ways in which it works for you. You know, it's like, I don't bake cookies. You know what I'm saying? I don't take the cookies to the school, okay? So when it's bake sale day, I go buy it, all right? I will put on a plate though, okay? I don't want them to know it came out the box. But you know, I will do that. And you know, it's like the one little story is that last year my daughter was starting 3rd grade. And it was the first day of school, and you know, the teacher had asked all the parents to come and stay for the whole day. And I couldn't, because I had to actually I had to catch a flight for a meeting that I had to be at. And on the way there, I was just like dreading, you know, like I was dropping her off, and I felt so terrible. And so we get into the classroom, I take her backpack, I'm like trying to unpack a little bit, because I'm like watching my clock, I'm like, I gotta go, but I'm trying to do the little things. And she's over in the corner with her little girlfriends, because you know, even in 3rd grade, they got little girlfriends. So she's standing in the corner, and I overheard her talking, and she was like, one of the little girls said, oh, my mommy's gonna stay. And Lael was like, well, my mommy can't. She's very busy. She has a very important meeting. You know? And I was like, oh, give me my purse. I'm not here. You know what I mean? I'm like, I got to go. Okay. But that's the most, to me, that's been, I'm telling you, like, I brag on that because I am so proud that she thinks I'm worthy of bragging over. You know, that gives me the immense joy and pride in now being this single mother who is doing it. You know, I want her to know that it is possible, that even after grief, after trauma, after all those things, that you can get up. And by the way, I didn't have my first C-suite job until after my husband passed away. And so for me, it's the testimony, understanding that I am resilient, I have the power, and that hopefully she'll be even greater than me because of the journey I'm on.
Amen.
Powerful.
I know.
Hercules.
Okay, so we're running out of time, but before I open the floor up for questions, I wanted to see if there's any questions that you guys had for one another.
Well, Janine already asked all the questions.
We can go to the floor. Let's go to the floor.
Ask all the questions. There's no more questions to ask.
We've been talking all day with each other.
I love you, boo.
Okay, we'll take your question. She's right here.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, my name is Naima. I have a question about loving yourself. Because all of what you talked about was, you know, loving yourself and taking care of yourself. So I am in my 40s, and people always say, you know, you're controlling, you're bossy, you're loud, you're this. And it took a long time for me to kind of finally love who I was, because you hear so many negative descriptions of who you are. And you want to be better, and you want to be the best you, but you don't realize that that's just sometimes people's insecurities on themselves. Like they're projecting what they think about themselves on you. You're intimidating. Well, what you said really hurt my feelings. So instead of them saying those type of things, they use other words to describe them, you. So how do you work through that, where many people did give you all these descriptions of you, and you believe it for so long, it takes you a while to fully love who you are?
Girl, that's a good, yeah.
It sounds like that you're already halfway there. Further. Okay. I was like, you asked and answered the question. I was like, you did. Okay. I was like, I just wanted to be clear. Okay, I got you. Okay, because I was like, you just said the whole, like, the answer and the thing. I really think it is, I'll just go back to kind of almost where I started with that, is taking some time off for you. Because I think sometimes you just, particularly with social media, which I didn't grow up with, obviously, but now you have incoming in real life, you have incoming on social media, you have people, just talking about situations and things, and like it's just nonstop. And in order to kind of really dig into yourself, you literally have to carve out the time, like the physical time and space, to have the brutal facts conversation. I'm going to do that tonight. And I think that's the first step in trying to do that, because, and also knowing that it's not a place you get to and then that's it. It's a place that you get to, you're comfortable with, and then you're going to pivot, and then you're going to pivot. And then once you're comfortable with the pivots, then I'm not trying to get to this place and know and love myself, and I'm going to know and love myself, and then that's it. Like, you're going to be constantly, and that's what you should hope for yourself, is that you're constantly put in situations when you're challenged and when you have to almost reinvent who you are, because then that's how you continue to grow.
Yeah. You know what? One thing does need to be said, though, is that sometimes I think we get in such a defense mechanism that we stop listening to the criticism. Not everybody's a hater. Really, not everybody's a hater.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes there's some truth in the criticism, and we have to pay attention to it. And so even though there is that place, of course, of self-love and knowing that, like perhaps, yes, you are using the wrong words to describe me because it's really about you. But that sometimes the feedback that you're getting, especially if it's repeated a bunch of times, that there is some truth in it, and that we have to pay attention to that so that we can then course correct or find new ways of communicating. Right? So that you can have your ideas heard or your voices heard or feel like you are contributing in a way that people will receive.
Yep.
Because without that reception, you actually cannot then do the work.
And particularly in the workplace, and that's a great point, Baz, because I talk to people many times about executive presence and what does that mean, and people underestimate that, like, you're like, why am I working so hard and I'm not moving forward? It is because of that executive presence. When someone is going to hire you or promote you or whatever, when they do that, you are a reflection of them.
That's right.
And that speaks to a host of diversity issues, which I'm not going to get into today, but as it relates to how you show up in the workplace, so to that point, if you keep hearing these kind of things that might, and you also want to hear what the narrative is above you, below you, and your peers, because all of that impacts your next move. People completely underestimate the power of your peer set, and they completely underestimate the people who they manage. Because both of those things are critical to that, to your success and to being a great manager and a great leader. But it is just so important to understand what showing up in your workspace mean, because every culture is very, very different. For example, when I was at MTV, I dressed like this, and I'm a pretty casual person. When I went up to Viacom, and then we had a shift in management at a Viacom corporate level, like I walked in with jeans one day, and I could feel, like I was like, okay, I'll be right back. I got it. And it was a different culture, and just like literally in one day. And so showing up for my previous boss, showing up for my new boss was completely different. So if he saw it, he would have been like, she came in here looking, I don't even understand. So you have to understand your cultural values so you understand what executive presence means in the context of where you are.
You in the back, the brown jacket. I think we have time for one more question after this.
Okay, we'll be short answers. So.
I know, we won't all answer.
I left my phone on.
Hi, ladies. My question is actually on building relationships. So you now have all reached different peaks in your careers where you're known and you're respected in your industries. Opportunities now come to you. Ms. St. John, you spoke about how Travis Kalanick, now he came to you and he presented you with an opportunity. But at this point, what strategies do you guys use to formulate new business relationships?
Well, first of all, I just love the whole presentation of that question.
Yeah. Okay.
Just the whole thing. I was like, just keep asking the question. I'm sorry.
You know what? It's funny because when we were talking before about sort of networking and making the plan and the calls and things like that, it is so important to continue nurturing those relationships, right? You actually never really know where the next business opportunity is going to come from or where the next relationship is going to then take you. And it's interesting, again, to the point about the fact that the moves I've made have not only been ones that people didn't always agree with, but I have actually, in the last 4 jobs, each job has been created for me. And so those have become real because of the relationships and the people I've known, right? And so it's like from Pepsi to beads, that relationship was because Jimmy Iovine saw the work I was doing. I'd been talking in and around his circle, and when Beats Music was created, he needed a chief marketing officer, and then I took that job. And then when I transitioned into Apple, it was because the business was sold, but also because of the relationship I'd formed with Apple within the acquisition period, right? And it wasn't because I just needed a job, it was because I really wanted to make the acquisition work, And I think for all of us, we look at our relationships as those that sometimes feel like just friendships, right? The same ways that you would enter any relationship, that you want to make sure that it is, the word authentic is so overused, but it's really real, right? In that if you're not going to get along with someone, you're probably not going to get along with them in business either. Right. So don't force that. It's like if you're going to make a relationship, make it real. You would go out for dinner with that person. You would have drinks with that person. You would be vulnerable with that person because business is vulnerable, right? You're going to take risks. You're going to ask for things that seem big, and people need to be able to trust you. You need to be vulnerable in that space. And so for me, all the business opportunities have come because of the relationships that I've been able to formulate.
And one thing I would say to just quickly to that is how to make sure that you have those relationships is putting yourself out there in constructive ways. So most people know me as very much behind the scenes. I'm not like usually on the stage. I'm the one who's handing the note cards and doing the rent. And so recently I have done some more, inspired by some ladies on the stage. But that has generated more. Like you do one thing, and then that generates the next thing, and that generates the next thing. So I think sometimes you have to work hard, of course, but also work smarter. And when you put yourselves in environments, I'm on the board of ColorCom, for example, and I love all the events that we do and the connections that are made. And it's from a relationship with a woman there that I'm getting a big award next week. I'm really excited about. Yes. And those are the types of things that you have to do. And then just speaking about relationships, which got me on the stage, the gentleman that's right in front of you, Mr. Sean G.
Yes, Sean G. Yes.
Sean G's so tight, he calls you, he's like, hey, can you do this on this day? Yep, sure, okay, whatever you need.
First of all, Sean just called everybody, was like, you think you could do this real quick? Sean, it's like I'm across the country.
And you're like, yes, goodbye. And that's, that relationship that you nurture over time. So I think all of us are here literally on this stage because of a relationship.
That's right.
One more question.
I'm not picking.
In getting to the C-suite, do you feel that, I come from an African background and my parents were like, get your business degree, get whatever, that next thing is. So do you feel like we should be looking at postgraduate degrees and such like that as well if you have, went to college as well?
I think it just depends on what you want to do. My father really wanted me to go to law school. Like, that was his jam. And I was in that LSAT, that first little pre-test back. I was like, I tried to get my Princeton review money back. I was like, come on. You see my score, come on. But then I ended up getting a postgraduate degree in public policy. But I think it's finding a postgraduate program that leads you to, that helps you think better and raise your game. So for me, a public policy degree was really about structure and thinking and problem solving. So I think a postgraduate degree is important, but I think it really just depends on if you know what you want to do, because I would only suggest going to postgraduate school if you know what you want to do at that time. And you can curate what that looks like. But I think it's not, at the same time, I don't think it's necessary because there's so many more opportunities now than there were certainly when I was going through the process.
Yeah, I would sort of say yes, +1 and all that. I did get my MBA. I think you have to look at where you want to go and see if a graduate degree will serve you, because I don't think it's for everyone. One of the things, though, I thought I wanted to do something when I went to business school, and then when I got there, I was exposed to so much more that I didn't even know was possible. I didn't even know what private equity was until I went to business school, and then, who was in private equity and how much money you can make? You're like, I had no idea. But you learn so much about other things that exist within business and what business means. And even if you don't want to go into the C-suite, so I'm going to sort of make a sort of play for an MBA if that's what you want to do. It allows you to have the critical thinking skills, the financial acumen, the ability to work through what a business plan can and should look like, what success looks like in any area of your life, whether you want to go to a nonprofit, if you want to do sort of international sort of policy, whatever, it is still additive, but you just have to do your own ROI of like, okay, where you are in your career, it's expensive, you have to determine what you want to do afterwards and see if it's worth it for what field you're going into. So, as what we've said for everything today, you have to look at yourself and see what's important for you. Yeah. It happened to benefit me, but it's not a requirement by any stretch of the imagination.
And again, it's like the diversity on the stage. I don't have a graduate degree. Right after I finished my BA, I moved to New York and became an assistant. And I have African parents as well, from Ghana. And my dad was like, so you have graduated college. And then you are going to go assist somebody else. And this money that I paid, but look at me now.
That's right.
Are you Nigerian? Is that why? Liberian? You're not even in the conversation. No, I'm kidding. I'm playing. It's all love. I love you. We're not gonna end like that, girl. I love you.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Yeah, okay, that concludes our panel for today. Thank you, everyone.
Wait,
for
can we
coming.
give an applause?